Greetings and welcome to another episode of Q Points Podcast. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, sometimes known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. And Sir Daniel, it feels like a month of Sundays since we've been live together. It's been a minute.
It feels like that, yes, because last week you snuck into town.
I did.
You were here in Atlanta in the flesh. We got to hang out and we got to do what we do best, and that's come up with new and improved and fresh stuff for 2025. Y'all ain't even gonna be ready for what's about to happen. So, but I don't want to distract you all from the topic at hand, because J Ray, we are talking about I believe this is going to be an ongoing feature of ours about some Black famous non-Black artists that we're going to discuss on Q Points, because J Ray, as you know, Q Points is the podcast dropping the needle on Black music history, and there are a few non-Black artists that have made their way into our hearts.
Yes.
In the Black community. And tonight we are going to discuss Mr. George. I should have printed out his full name, but I know it's George Kyriakos Payatimos, something.
That is correct. You're really close. Yes.
I know I got the Georgios Kyriakos.
Yep.
The last name I can't pronounce, but we all know him lovingly as Mr. George Michael over here on Q Points and across the world. But J Ray, did you realize that George is 3 out of 3 entertainers that have the distinction of passing away, leaving this earthly plane on Christmas Day? There was Eartha Kitt, James Brown, and George Michael. In grand entertainer fashion, very dramatic. I'm going to leave this earth on the day that I know that everybody is home and I got everybody's attention. I'm going to leave this earth in grand fashion, and George in particular, with his hit Last Christmas, was all that was playing on the radio that day.
One of the biggest Christmas songs ever made. I just didn't know. So until you put that in the notes, Sir Daniel, I did not realize that fact. And these are all powerhouse artists. And Mark is in the chat on YouTube and said he thinks that did James Avery pass away on Christmas Day too? Was that wow? And I'm actually real quick going to shout out some folks that are over on Instagram. So we have Kyriakos, whose middle name Kyriakos shares a middle name with one George Michael, and we see Stephanie from Mocha Minutes, shout out. We see Pretty Brown Eyes from In the Mix with Leah B, and our brother Daryl is over on IG. Definitely check in with where y'all tuning in from. Oh, and James Avery looks like thank you, Mark. James Avery passed away on New Year's Eve.
On New Year's Eve. Look at that. So let's just delve into it. We call this segment, well, J Ray, why do we call this segment Black Famous? Just to bring everybody up to speed.
So here's the thing that we know for sure, is that there are some artists that have this interesting distinction in the Black community for just being like an artist that Black people are really into. And for a lot of artists, they sometimes become exclusively like Black famous. For instance, our first non-Black artist that we actually featured on Q Points was one Tina Marie, who I promise you, and we know this, that there are white folks who literally have no idea who Tina Marie is.
Right. And speaking of Tina Marie, there's a question in the IG chat. She actually died the day after Christmas.
After Christmas. Wow, that is okay. So we just talked about Miss Tina Marie. So now that's why we call folks Black famous, where Black folks have this connection to certain stars that outside of Black community they don't know much about. Another interesting Black famous artist is Bobby Caldwell. First of all, there's a bunch of Black people that didn't even know that Bobby Caldwell was white until like 2 years ago.
Facts.
Now, George Michael, we George Michael is still black famous, even though George Michael is like universally famous. But
Mm-hmm.
black folks, we got us a special place in our heart for one George Michael, and that is what makes him black famous. It's like, listen, there are certain George Michael songs that black folks know and rock with all day that white folks might know that song, but black folks is like, no, play that. That's our jam.
Exactly. I think it has to be said. So now I know that I have said on numerous times on this podcast, I've closed the gate on the cookout.
Closed.
The invites, no more invites are coming from me to the cookout. It's just not a thing. Because there are artists who continue to come to the black community, get their fame, get their swagger, get their beats, whatever it is, whatever they want, they come and get it from the black community. And then they go about their business, and then they go and transition into pop stars and just completely negate the community that made them famous. I
Yes.
think most recently, we saw, who was that young man?
Jack Harlow.
Jack Harlow performing Elvis covers at a performance. And so I'm like, that's like one of the four horsemen of that white artist, your blue-eyed soul artist leaving their lane and going for broader pastures. And then, J. Ray, there was some comment on Twitter, some podcast, this guy, young white man that I don't know if he has the platform, but one of those platforms where people go on and they freestyle and and showcase themselves. I sent it to you. It was the young man that was
Oh, the young
talking
man
about
that said, I don't like no soul, nothing. Don't bring me
I
no
don't
soul
like
samples.
it. Don't bring me no soul samples. That he calls it unk music, and he was really. It just irked me that he was speaking on the culture. He was speaking on sampling. He was speaking on the creation of black music, and really was speaking his mind like it mattered. And I think that's because people have given out too many passes, given out too many invites to the cookout. These people feel emboldened to speak on family business.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that, to bring it back to tonight's to this particular episode's topic, George Michael never gave that. George
Never
Michael
switched up.
was never switched up. George Michael and his best friend and partner of many years, Andrew Ridgeley, got together when they were just kids in England, and in 1981, became huge pop stars when they came together and formed the group Wham.
Yeah.
And what they did do, because they were from England and was getting a lot of the music from the US and was getting a lot of influences from soul artists,
Mm-hmm.
they showed that they appreciated the music and their music was influenced by it. But I never saw George try to switch up and put on and try to be more than he was. He just let his talent show in the music that he created.
Yeah, I actually want to pull out a couple interesting things to that point. So, Wham's big introduction in the UK was a song called Wham Rap. So, George Michael was rapping over this pop beat. It was the early 1980s, and kind of cheesy, but it was also innovative for the time because hip hop was still very new when Wham Rap was released, and they ended up having to re-release it later because they released it didn't do anything, but as Wham's profile raised, they ended up re-releasing Wham Rap, and then it became like a hit. But to that earlier point, I think it's interesting to note that the friendship between George and Andrew, we watched that documentary, and if y'all haven't seen it, definitely go on over to Netflix and check it out. Andrew talks about the fact that George was like really shy. And so George was trying to be Andrew, right? And Andrew was just like trying to be like a cool dude and all of that stuff. And George was like, I want to be like that. And so watching George kind of emerge as this powerhouse songwriter that was really committed to the craft was really, really interesting. But going back to the topic of this show, you're right. Like George Michael just didn't switch up. He was clearly and verbally outwardly influenced by black artists, soul artists, R&B artists, and you would see them in the mid 80s. Like if it was like a collaboration, like George would be right up there with the black folks. I think there was like an Apollo thing. George Michael was there, but wasn't doing too much. You know how
No,
some of
but
the
when
you know
they
how some of the white folks do. They be
right
doing too much. And George was like, nah, this is like, I'm here doing my thing.
that, but when the microphone was passed to him, he didn't shy away. He represented. He did what he needed to do. So yeah, and those were appearances that endeared him to the black community even more. And when I think it's funny you say that George was it was thank you, Kyriakos. Motown, it was actually Motown 25, and that's a huge stage
Right.
for him to be on. And to be able to be invited to that cookout. Um, you're talking about George as being just very shy, but truly the really creative force behind the group because
Yep.
he was the main songwriter, the lead vocalist,
Producer.
and also producer, and ultimately became like the sex symbol of the group.
Yeah. Which is of course crazy in retrospect, but it made sense in retrospect because now when you go back and look at them videos, you'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, sure.
Sure.
But yeah, he
You know,
became
if you like that sort of thing.
if you're into that. But so I'm curious to know about this for you, Sir Daniel. Like, when did you first recognize Wham? Like, what was your entry point?
You did the jitterbug, and then the jitterbug.
Jitterbug.
I can't remember if I heard it first on the radio or if I saw it on like one of those Friday night like hot tracks or one of those video shows that would come on, or like American Bandstand, one of those video shows that would come on that you didn't have to have cable to watch, right? And it's the 80s, so they had on the day glow t-shirts, the t-shirts with the white t-shirts with the big Wham written across. And so it was just they were eye-catching. I'm a kid. So this is bright, this day glow color. They're bright and flashy, and you know he's doing he's doing the Carlton dance before Carlton did the dance, and they were just having a lot of fun. I'm trying to think if maybe the influence of like a Boy George kind of opened the door for an appreciation for George Michael, because George wasn't over the top. George wasn't over the top like Boy George, but there was still a flirty flamboyantness to both of them that I think was very attractive. And then you had this song, the "Wake Me Up" song, sounded like straight out of a 50s jukebox.
Right.
It had the doo-wop sound. They had their names Cheryl and Pepsi, the black girl and the white girl singing behind them. As their backup singer, long time backup singers. And they were just having fun. They had, if you remember the video, they had like a long line of black girl backup singers with the long braids and everything. So, we saw people in there that looked like us, and I was like, oh, they got people in there representing. On in "Wake Me Up Before You Go." So, and that song was everywhere. It was catchy as hell. So that was my first recollection of Wham and George Michael as the front man. But what about you, J. Ray?
Yeah, so that was definitely my intro. So I've said on this show many, many times, I grew up as an MTV BET kid. So I watched music videos all the time. So Wake Me Up Before You Go Go comes out. I hadn't even seen Wham rap yet because I don't
Hmm.
think MTV, at least in the US, had like picked it up. I ended up seeing
Nah,
it later after the Make It Big album came out, which is such a prophetic name, right? It's like very prophetic. It's like make it big. We either gonna do this thing right now or this thing ain't gonna happen. And that thing went crazy. But I will say this. I vividly remember single number two is Careless Whisper. I vividly remember hearing that saxophone.
mm,
And there is a thing, it's the Quincy Jones thing that he talks about where it's just like the ear candy where it's like you can't get it out of your head. And I remember as a kid, so I'm probably what, 8, hearing this saxophone and hearing this song start and how it's kind of a big opening intro and then it fades down and here comes George's vocal and he's giving you real soul vocal on top of this thing. And I remember going to my Aunt Lizzie's house and she had the album. And that's when I knew it was okay for me to be like, oh, I could be into this
hmm.
because my aunt had like, so I remember just feeling like, oh yeah, George Michael, he's cool. You know what I'm saying? Because black households owned Make It Big in the record. Because Careless Whisper, to this day, y'all, in Philly, Sir Daniel, on classic R&B radio, Quiet Storm, and during the day, you can hear Careless Whisper. It's
I
just
love
that
that.
magical.
It absolutely belongs there. And I don't know. Speaking of Wham songs, I don't know if you can see it behind me,
Mm-hmm.
but I absolutely loved Everything She Wants.
Who doesn't?
Everything She
If
Wants.
you don't like that song, what's
That
wrong?
is, we're talking about when they got involved in the funk
Mm-mm.
and this R&B co-opted this R&B smooth funk with the, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if they realized how funky that song was at the time. It's up there with like Hall of Notes and
Wow,
exactly.
wow, wow.
You know, when you hear that, it's like everybody just loses it and they're like, oh yes, a jam is about to come forth. It's, I don't know, it's just one of those things that you can drop in a set. I can drop that in a set right now and everybody's going to be involved and everybody's going to have a great time. And Wham, you know, we forget that that is the launching pad for George Michael as a solo artist. But then he kept coming with the hits. And that solo, when he went solo, he just kept coming with the hits. He became a little more controversial because, well, go ahead, because I want to ask about favorite songs. Period.
Ooh,
If you can pick
okay.
one.
Okay. I have things there. So I definitely want to share. Mark just put something in the chat that's really interesting. So Careless Whisper, and then I'm gonna get to Faith in a minute.
Mhm.
Careless Whisper, they did a whole series of sessions at Muscle Shoals. You're absolutely right, Mark. They ended up not using the Muscle Shoals stuff though. So they ended up doing all of this stuff because George kind of knew what he wanted,
Mhm.
but they wanted this like heavy soul sound. So they did a bunch of recording at Muscle Shoals, which ended up informing what George ultimately did. So I am curious, and it might be out there. Somebody let us know in the chat. Mark, you may know this. Is the Muscle Shoals version of Careless Whisper available? I would be surprised if it's not. I haven't heard it, but yeah. So Careless Whisper, they did like a whole bunch of sessions with like at like the Muscle Shoals studio, and it was like a whole thing. But George ended up kind of taking it and kind of doing some other things with it. So, but going to George as a solo artist. So what we know about Make It Big, George wanted to go solo, right?
Mhm.
Um, him and Andrew were still cool, but Andrew was like, I mean, it's whatever to me. Like, I don't have to do the pop star thing. I'm doing this because I'm with you, but I can also not do that, right?
Can we
So
talk about that for a minute? Like it
mhm,
takes a certain person, a certain kind of artist to who is also talented, who is
mhm,
not there just because they're pretty.
right.
Andrew offered a lot to the group,
Mhm.
but to know that your bestie is
Yes.
clearly a superstar
Yes.
and to be okay with stepping back, that's
Yep.
unheard of because we have superstars who have siblings in the business that were really their biggest haters. And you don't
Right.
have to, and I don't have to say who name names because y'all can figure that out. But for your best friend to be like, you know what, you got it, and I'm okay with stepping back.
That's dope. You know what I mean? So George's thing, and this is in the documentary too, where
Mm-hmm.
his manager was like, "You're not gonna have a solo album if this album ain't a hit. So what you gonna do, bruh?" You know what I mean? So George was like, "Well, let me write these songs real
Hmm.
quick." So George as a solo artist. Fun fact, Sir Daniel. Um, when George Michael's Faith was released, first of all, that song is just catchy as all hell. Like Faith, and it was so different for that time because it was just George and like a groovy guitar, and he's wearing the leather or whatever, um
Aviator glasses,
the
the leather
aviator
jacket,
glasses and all of that.
the ripped
So,
jeans.
but
Yeah,
I Want Your Sex, of course, you mentioned the controversy is like single one, which is one of those songs where I didn't know if I should like that song because I was a kid. You know
right.
what I mean? And I'm like, the song had a word in it that I didn't know that I could say.
Mhm. So I think I had a different relationship with that song because so we were watching Video Music Box. I think I might have been maybe 11 at that time. So I'm knocking on tweens. I'm knocking on hormones and
Mm-hmm.
adolescenthood. And so when I heard "I Want Your Sex," I'm all ears. It's like I want more of this. I want to hear more of it. And that song, outside of the message, is it's bare bones
Mm-hmm.
with that bass. It's bare bones. And, George's vocal, and when that background singer comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing he's singing from the bottom of his toenails on that song. And but the thing about that song, there were, I don't know if you're probably too a little bit younger to remember this, but a lot of songs were being co-opted to bring awareness to the rising HIV and AIDS
Absolutely.
crisis.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
so "I Want Your Sex," like especially on like Video Music Box, was turned into like a PSA. I
Yep.
can't remember if he appeared in it or if they took the song, licensed it, and created like a vignette of people with condoms, and these were geared to like heterosexual audiences because they use um, all they use men heterosexual couples, they use gay couples in these PSAs. But I remember that it had such an impact, and I remember not understanding why it was so controversial
Mm.
and not understanding why is this a bad thing. Why is
Mm-hmm.
it bad that he's saying "I want your sex," and now it's opening conversation for this epidemic that's happening within the community, and he's trying to warn people. So I just couldn't understand it, but I knew I wanted more of it. I knew if I heard it on the radio, I was jamming to it. It was just that funky. I just couldn't understand it. But yeah, and did he have some? No, no. I'm not gonna. I don't think that was George Michael, but that was my relationship with this song, and that is why "I Want Your Sex" is probably my favorite George Michael song.
Ooh, I'm gonna hold. Ooh, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't even think. Okay, so I got to now think about my favorite George Michael song. Okay, I think I know the answer to this, but I do want to, as we talk about Faith, I feel like there is, well, one, there are several songs. Faith in historical context is considered an R&B album. It actually ended up winning like R&B awards. Like it won at the American Music Awards. I don't know who it was up against. I actually need to go back and look up who Faith was up against. But it ended up winning several awards, I think in like 1988 as like an R&B album, which, you know what? It got that honest. So to give folks a sense of what was on this record, we talked about I Want Your Sex, which was funky as hell. We talked about Faith, which was a pop ditty. One of my favorite songs from this record, actually these two songs back to back. So Father Figure, woo, Father Figure is like a thing. And the song though that I remember hitting on R&B radio on all cylinders was One More Try. Like that joint on the radio in Philadelphia would play all the time, and it probably is still playing on Quiet Storm, but that joint was on there as well. And then my favorite song from Faith is Monkey. Monkey goes off.
Yeah. You know what? I just remember those songs just being like omnipresent. You know, you could be anywhere and hear those songs, especially if it had a remix. And I know that at that age, at that time, remixes were starting to be introduced, and you had longer playing remixes because, you know, DJs were being more established and wanted dance hits out of these records. So Monkey, okay, that's dope. I get it.
From Faith, and
From Faith.
I think what's cool about George is he ended up just kind of throughout his career, just kind of continuing. George mastered kind of like that pop R&B lane, because of course we get Freedom, which the video is the most classic video of like the 90s.
You have all the supermodels in the video. Yeah.
All of the supermodels are in this video, and
he's not.
And he is not in it.
Yeah.
Yep. And he just kind of continues along this path of this thing. And one of the things, and I remember the moment in time when this happened, you know, of course, the Red Hot album, I think it was the second Red Hot album, where Too Funky hits. I remember the summer when Too Funky hit, because we were going like family vacation, and all of a sudden there was a new George Michael song that came out. But it was crazy because, you know, it had the sample in it. It was funky. Of course, the video, again, had all of these supermodels in it. And once again, George Michael is like, I'm a stick to my pop R&B bag.
And it served him well. But before we wrap up the conversation about George Michael, we got to talk about the thing that really just endeared him to the community, or at least showed that he knew what he was doing. George Michael has had several duets with some very powerful Black women. And I mean, from the beginning, from the top, like one of his biggest duets and biggest records was with Aretha Franklin. And there's a clip that I can see on that's online of them performing it, and Aretha has on her leather jacket, and she's got this is spiky hair. This is spiky hair, Aretha. And with
Who's zooming who era?
Who's zooming who with the fingerless gloves, and they're on stage together. And Aretha Franklin is hitting a mean Cabbage Patch, while she and George are just singing it. When the river was deep, I did it fall down. Their voices, their vocals did a really nice marriage on that song. George was able to bring it, but not try to do too much when it came to these powerhouses, because he did that with Aretha Franklin. course, he had the duet with Mary J. Blige, and I
Yeah,
think one of
his
our
dad, that was a good version.
wasn't that so the two of them covering a Stevie Wonder song is
Mm-hmm.
like that's magical in itself.
Yep.
So you've got George, Mary, and Stevie Wonder. Come on. It's like
Yeah.
his hood pass just keeps getting stamped every year, every single year. Him and Mariah Carey. I think there
Of
was two
course.
versions to the song, but the song was there's a duet version. I can't think of the name of the song right now, but it was with Mariah Carey, and he's featured on it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the whistle queen, the whistle note queen, is going to do everything that she's known to be doing, but he never backed down, never
No,
backed down.
no. Um, I think that's a testament to his talent. Um, he knew he had it. I remember watching, I think it was Behind the Music or something like that, where he was talking about the fact that he knew he knew how to write a song. Like
Mm-hmm.
he just understood how to write a song that was catchy and interesting. And was also questioning like later on in the career, like, oh, but do I still have the thing? Like, can I still do it? And one of my late stage George Michael joints, and I'm curious to know what folks in the chat think too, but Fast Love. Fast Love is a bop to me. That whole older album goes to me, but yeah, George Michael never backed down. And we are gonna forever stand for a Mr. George Michael because there's too many bops to not stand.
Oh, how could I forget? Ray,
What?
George Michael had a duet with one Whitney Houston.
He did have a duet with Whitney Houston, yes. What did they do together?
And I know it was a 2000s
It was,
bop.
yeah, during her like 2001 era.
It was during that it came out during the
Yeah, what did they do, y'all? Let us know. I gotta look that up.
I
If I
know
told
that
you that there was a
if I
point, if I
told you
told you
that.
that. Okay,
If
yep.
I told you that, yes.
Mhm.
And the that video, there's a clip that lives in meme history. It never gets old. Of Whitney being Whitney and shaking her head and pointing at George. And I think people would have loved to see. I don't think they got to perform that live together. And I think that would have been phenomenal to see
Yeah.
George being George and Whitney being, Whitney being Whitney. And, us we missed out. We could have gotten all of those antics,
Yes.
at some point if things had happened. Like most artists, they have their private struggles.
Mhm.
For him to have had those really, he had private struggles that ended up in the public eye. He bounced back quite a few times. Considering he had all those scandals, and the black community just we didn't say much. It's like we knew about George and his sexuality, but nobody ever said anything about that, which is
Listen,
different.
George Michael was serving you amazing music. You know what I mean? And I do, and not for nothing, I love a good clapback. Outside is one of my favorite clapback songs. And he was like,
Yes.
what you gonna do? I'm gonna just write a song about this and let y'all have it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I think it is a testament to the fact that the songs held up. Despite all the things that folks may have thought, said, whatever, it was like, yeah, you kind of can't. If this song comes on, you're going to dance to it, or you're going to sing this, or it's going to be at a wedding, or whatever it's going to be. That is the mark of a timeless career. If there's any artists that are listening to Q Points tonight, like, just create beautiful music that stands the test of time, man.
Thing right here, the pen will always save you. That pen will
save you.
That pen will. So the pen is mightier than the sword.
Right.
It has been the salvation of many artists down on their luck. that pen has brought them back to life.
Mm,
And and it's truly a gift. And
yes.
George Michael had it. We can't. I don't think. Did we mention Father Figure? Because
I
Father
mentioned
Figure.
it as one of my favorites from. Yes, that's a
Okay,
great
because
song.
Black people love them a Father Figure.
I
We
will
love
be
us a
a
Father
father.
Figure.
Psh.
When those when that keyboard, that synthesizer comes in,
Mhm.
we just absolutely go in for it. But yeah, so this wraps up another conversation, another episode of Black Famous with Q Points, and this time we were talking about George Michael. um, uh, we have our ideas of who else we want to talk about as far as Black Famous is concerned, but
Let
we're
us know.
curious as to who you think should be spotlighted in our next Black Famous episode of Q Points coming down the line for 2025, because there's plenty of quite a few people. It could be a solo artist,
Mhm.
or it could be a group. There might be
Yeah.
a group or two that you are Black Famous that you think should be spoken about on Q Points. But before we get up out of here, J Ray, there's a couple of things that I know we said we were going to do and
Yes.
watch and discuss because it's
And I
hot in
didn't
the time.
watch it yet.
You didn't watch it?
No, but I
Okay,
okay, okay. So y'all
I
okay,
did.
I want to watch it. I want to you watched it? Okay.
I did. And I hate to be that person.
Go ahead, talk about it.
In true Sir Daniel form, I wished I liked it more.
Really? Okay, so y'all, we should tell them what we're talking about then. Cuz I know.
We are discussing the Jamie Foxx Netflix special.
Mhm.
See, I was under the impression that it was going to be a straight up comedy, a stand up show. Um, and for good reasons, it was more of a Jamie Foxx's testimony,
Mhm.
his Jamie Foxx's gospel hour, whatever you want to call it.
Stop it.
It turned into all of those things. It was shot here in Atlanta because I recognize that the theater at the Alliance Theater. Um, there were some funny parts. There were some funny parts. It just wasn't. I don't want to. That man went through a very traumatic
Mhm.
thing, and this was his way of working through it and doing it the best way that he knows how. I think my mind, I was just expecting just straight, punchlines after
Mhm.
punchlines, just straight up comedy. And there are quite a few interesting moments that happened during that special. That's why I'm not calling it a stand up special. I'm just calling it a Jamie Foxx Netflix special. But from what some people are saying, maybe this is him priming us for him to become like uh evangelical Jamie
I'm going to say
Foxx,
don't. What what
evangelical Eric Bishop, because that's his government. So he might go back to being called Bishop Eric Bishop.
you know, I wouldn't even be mad at it. I mean, we've definitely seen we've seen that plenty of times in Black celebrity. One of
Mm.
my and an artist we haven't talked about on the show that we have to get to is Al Green, is one of my kind of favorite
Hmm.
artists that kind of walked back and forth, right, over these lines. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I see Kay from Pondering Thoughts podcast is going to watch it tonight.
Yeah.
So we aren't going to do any spoilers. I will say I think this has been public information, so I don't think this is a spoiler. But I am happy that apparently some of the rumors, because remember there were some like Diddy rumors that people were like, here's what he said, and then apparently that's like not a real thing. I'm just happy that stuff like that got put to bed. And I'm also, can I just say, I'm tired of the news cycle, like the Jay-Z stuff, the Jaguar rights stuff. I'm tired of the news cycle. Sidebar, apparently Jaguar is saying that she never said things about Jay-Z, which is wild.
Very wild. Have you noticed the time? I've noticed that the timeline has gotten quieter. Like something has happened and she's not showing up on my timeline like she used to. Well, then again, I did block her content. So because
Right.
I'd had enough. But you're right, the news cycle has been a dumpster fire, like between Remy Ma and Papoose, and the shooting of the United Healthcare
Yeah,
guy. It's been wild. Like 2024
24.
is not is like literally clawing, white knuckling its way into 2025. It's like I'm not going out of here without just really showing my ass. I'm really going to shock you with more stuff before we still got a
Yep.
couple of weeks.
Yep.
And I'm gonna keep shocking you until my time is up.
Yeah. So saying all that too, I think as we wrap, hold on, before I do that, I want to bring in Kyriakos in Instagram. I have never heard the Al Green cover of Everybody Hurts, but I am totally going to look for that
Oh,
like
gotta check that out.
tonight. But what I was going to say is take care of yourselves, y'all. Just take care of yourselves. It's okay to take a break. It is okay to just kind of like log off for some time
Just
if that's what you need to
engage.
do, because man, it's a lot going on out here in these internet streets.
Disengage, y'all. Like, just really turn on some Christmas lights. Even if you're not a big Christmas person, just look at the pretty lights. Just do something, do something to disengage and take your mind off of other people's problems, because we really don't have to take them in.
We don't know these people.
We don't know these people.
Mm-mm.
They're gonna be just fine without us. I wouldn't want to be in there. Right before we came on, Jerry, what did I say? I'm glad I'm not Remy or Pat right now. I would hate, like, can you imagine just
Mm.
how bad their nerves are right now because of all the mess that's going on, and that young lady, the boxer, she's got a movie coming out that she can't even
Girl,
celebrate because now that's being overshadowed by this controversy. So there's things sometimes you don't have to engage in everything,
you,
everybody. You do not.
you do
You don't
not.
have to answer that tweet. You don't even have to answer that phone call.
You literally, you could
People's
scroll
numbers
right
come up on
by.
the screen.
You could just let it be like, you know what, it's okay. I'm gonna get
I'm
to
gonna let
that.
that ring. Let it go to voicemail. And look, Jay, and this is some behind the scenes stuff. J Ray is notorious for for telling you the next day, "Oh, I didn't respond to your
I
text.
didn't respond to
I
your
meant
text.
to
I
respond to
literally,
that."
I will be responding to people's texts in my head,
In his head.
and I'll look at it and be like, because I overthink stuff. I'd be like, oh, especially if you asking me a question like, oh, I gotta like sit with that question. You know what I mean? Try to be the next day before, and you would have to come back, and I'd be like, oh, hey, that's right. I'm
And
back
guess
now.
what? The
It's fine.
world is still turning.
The world
Things did not
time
stop.
keeps. Yeah.
So, J Ray,
Y'all,
we're about to get up out of here. Can you believe it's like less than a week or so from Christmas? This is a lot going.
that surprises me, but it's all good. We are so grateful for y'all for
We are.
spending your time hanging out with us. If you are hearing our voices or seeing our faces, subscribe wherever you are. Do us a solid, share the show with your friends, family, and colleagues. There's some new stuff that's going to be happening on the YouTube, so like watch out on the YouTube. We're kind of curating it a little bit differently, so yeah, so that's going to be exciting. Visit our website at qpoints.com. There you can watch all of the episodes of the Q Points podcast. And you should also go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter at magazine.qpoints.com and shop our store at store.qpoints.com for fresh to death stuff.
Yes, there's still time to get those stocking stuffers.
Mm-hmm.
From
Oh, yeah,
Q
you got to
Point.
get them things. If you're getting them from our store, you better be doing it now because they may not arrive before Christmas. So.
Yeah, because apparently the postmaster doesn't like being told that he's doing a bad job, so he covers his ears up like this in front of Congress. But anyway,
That's a real thing.
that really happened. That really that really happened. I'm gonna have to send you the clip. But what do I always say? In this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play, or you can let that call go to voicemail. But you can let the record play. But I am DJ Sir Daniel.
My name is J Ray, y'all.
And this has been Q Points Podcast, dropping the needle on Black music history. We will see you on the next go round. Peace.
Peace, y'all.